I still love that.
And
unfortunately, I didn't
too.
get to get one with Justin, and I just didn't. I was gonna try it yesterday.
I still do. I
thank
still
you
like
for having
it.
me back, guys.
Thank you for coming back, Justin.
Yes.
Who is this guy? Wait.
Yeah, I'm gonna go down here.
Who is this?
Just a man who started it all. That's all.
For the new listeners, I was a co-host with Justise and Zach and Ray at some times, and I think Phil a few times. Yeah, I used to hang out with the EV guys way more than I do these days. But thank you for having me back, and I look forward to talking about whatever controversial stuff you guys cover on the show these days.
Can I ask you a silly question though before we get started?
Yes, sir.
Would you please explain to the folks why you haven't been around?
Yeah, well, I'm obviously still with CarEdge.
Yes.
I've been deeper in the marketing side of things. So if you guys check out caredge.com/guides, you can see literally hundreds. I think we're probably up to 400 free car buying guides, everything from the latest market updates to EV guidance, anything under the moon when it comes to the automotive world. I run the show over there on the guides side of the CarEdge world. And if you read your emails from CarEdge, I'm also helping out with that. So I'm sorry if I email you too much.
Very good.
I've never heard
a lot
that
of
you
emails,
email
Justin.
people too many times. I've never heard that.
That's good. I try not to. But yeah, I still have a 2022 Hyundai Ioniq 5. It's got 36,000 miles on it. My wife and I both drive it, so that's why it gets so many miles on it. But yeah, I am all in on EVs, and I look forward to talking about that today.
Well, we're going to let you.
Yeah. Tell us about your trip. You just took a trip in the Ioniq 5, huh?
Yeah. So
how'd that go?
It went well. It went well for me. I didn't have any problems charging, but I guess I'm always observant and always considerate of what other people's EV ownership experiences are like. And I'm an electric vehicle nerd, so when it comes to downloading 5 different apps to charge my car, it's not a big deal for me. But I was really thinking about what it would be like for the average driver today who's deciding to just buy that Mustang Mach-E or maybe that Volkswagen ID4 and drive halfway across the country for the first time in an EV. And I spoke to some of these people. I often do. I'm the weirdo who strikes up a conversation, not because I want to be their best friend, but because I really just want to know what they think about the electrification of driving today. And there was a common theme. If you don't own a Tesla, charging sucks. Hopefully that changes. And I think the decisions that have been made since I've been gone from the podcast, where it looks like everyone's switching to the Tesla charging standard, that could literally single-handedly save the electrification of light-duty vehicles in America, because that's what we need. I can put up with the crap, but not everyone wants to. But yeah, I drove 700 miles each way. On the way there, I had a strong headwind. It's weird how in an EV that matters way more than it does in a combustion vehicle, because yeah, if you're driving into a headwind in a gas-powered SUV, you're going to have worse gas mileage, but gas stations are everywhere. Not to mention that you can the car typically automatically shifts into the appropriate gear to maximize fuel economy on the highway, whereas in an electric vehicle, you're pushing through that wind. It's physics does not work in your favor on the highway in an EV, and I was really noticing that pushing across Illinois. So yeah, screw Illinois and its poor charging infrastructure. You need more chargers, Illinois, but I guess I should have just bought a Tesla, right?
I mean, I think some of us said that back in the day, but you got a good deal on your Ioniq 5 at a time where there weren't good deals. So,
and I got the tax credit. I would tell you today, if I was buying, I would buy a Model Y. I still love the interior and comfort and suspension of the Ioniq 5 more than the Model Y. I'm familiar with both. But that charging network and that tax credit, I would go for the Model Y if it was today.
Well, and, did you see, Justin, they opened up dealer networks to start applying for the upfront rebate program with the government was earlier this week.
Yeah, they're trying really hard to keep that from becoming a cash for clunkers catastrophe. I believe they've done the appropriate due diligence from what I've read on Automotive News. sounds like they've tried really hard to do it right, but we won't find out until January.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a silly question? Um, with the headwinds that you encountered, did you have to find some place sooner to charge the vehicle than what you had originally planned for? And what was the difficulty in doing that?
Yeah, this is where EV haters will come flocking and talk trash, and that's okay. It's okay, Phil. Maybe Ray.
That's all right.
Uh,
I was
Yeah.
just asking a question.
no. I'm going to tell you. I'm not holding back. I'm going to tell you what it's like. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
from the get-go, if I had a Model Y or a Model 3, or dare I say Model X, what a different world that would be, I would have had no problem. But
Okay.
with the DC fast charging infrastructure that existed in the state of Illinois for non-Tesla drivers, I thought I could make it all the way to the Iowa border, which was my destination. I ended up having to stop at a level 2 charger for like 45 minutes. And I was actually getting some work done. You know, may or may not have been some CarEdge car buying guides that I was working on.
Yes.
But while I was sitting there, I actually had police officers roll up and run my plates and just talk to me. So that doesn't happen at a gas station. I don't think I even told you about that, Justice.
No. Why?
yeah. They thought it was a private charger, and I taught them all about plug share and a better route planner, and showed them how it was a public charger. So they were friendly. Yeah, they were not really bothering me, but that doesn't happen at a gas station. So I sat there for 45 minutes like a dummy and got enough juice to make it to the DC fast charger. Luckily, I was alone, because can you imagine how upset my wife would be if I had to do that with her and the kids in the car? Yeah, EV ownership can get weird still in 2023, but better
Wow.
times ahead, hey?
Maybe.
So
Yeah, it is. And I've run into that before, Justin. Well, I haven't run into it, but I actually have a Tesla, so I don't have those problems. But I have thought about that after your and I conversations as I'm driving around. Like, I wouldn't necessarily know where these chargers are, and I know we talked about. I think last month there's a movement to start putting charger icons on highway signs, because not everybody knows where they are. You don't even know. I talked to people. Actually, I talked to my landlord about installing more chargers here, which he might do. I might be able to charge at home again.
wow.
But I talked to him. He's like, yeah, there's really no chargers around. And I told him, no, there's 6 Tesla chargers, like
Yeah.
within 7 miles of us. And he's never seen any of them. And, because he doesn't drive electric. And, there's a big portion of people just don't know where they are. They're not like gas stations where, even if it's not on the sign, you kind of pull off and you can get a feel of, okay, I think there's going to be gas stations over here. Like I see the buildings, I see the fast food. I'm pretty sure there's going to be some gas stations over there. You don't have that with electric. You don't know where they are. And
if you don't have a Tesla, you cannot own an electric vehicle in America without at least 5 EV dedicated apps on your phone. Otherwise, you'll just be miserable. So like I use PlugShare and a better route planner, and then often, well, of course, Electrify America's app, which I hate. ChargePoint, EVgo. There are apps that I use to charge, and that's like a whole nother part of EV ownership that my 82-year-old uncle, who's thinking about buying a Chevy Bolt, may not quite realize. So I've been trying to educate him and others about the realities of what it's like. But he's a nerd like me. He was an electrical engineer for decades, and I think he could handle it. But if you don't like learning how to do new things to simply drive your car from point A to point B, then it may not be for you. Not yet.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, that's why I'm here, Ray. I'm here for the questions.
Well, and I'm here to ask them. How much, when you said you were driving into a headwind and that impacted your range, by how much? 10%, 15%, 20%? You were thinking you were going to get all the way to the Iowa border. Obviously, you didn't. How much would you say it actually impacted the range of the vehicle? Just
There
out
was a
of
bit of
curiosity.
irresponsibility on my part, and I'll keep it short. So I was also driving like 75 to 78, maybe 80 miles an hour in a 70,
Okay.
driving north into a headwind, and it was 30 degrees outside. So I was just taking it easy because I'm not used to going on road trips by myself. Usually I have to make sure I don't embarrass the family and do things like this. But hey, I was by myself going to visit my uncle in Iowa, and I was like, screw the apps. I just want to keep driving. I know there's an Electrify America by Davenport, Iowa, right across the border from Illinois. I can make it from Peoria to there. It turns out I couldn't, so I stopped in a small town, which I forget the name of, and charged for a bit. So here's what my plan was, Ray. I planned on getting to that fast charger in Davenport, Iowa, with like 10% state of charge. It was going to be low, but I figured I could do it. I ended up hitting like 15% state of charge when I was still like 60 miles away. I was like, nah, I need to stop. Yeah, so it hit my range. I mean, just doing quick math, 20 to 30% less range in cold weather with a headwind.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
pretty significant.
Yeah. Now, of course, Phil, I want to hear what you think about this because you may know the answer here, but in an ICE vehicle, driving into a headwind is going to lower your driving range. Of course, there are gas stations everywhere. I don't need to be reminded of that, but how much would that affect your fuel economy and just like your typical, I don't know, modern SUV if you're driving into a headwind on the highway going 75 miles an hour? Is this like 10%? I don't know.
Well, I can probably guess at about, I don't know, 3 or 4 miles per gallon difference.
Okay. So depending on the vehicle, that could be
Mhm.
10 to 15%. The difference is gas stations are everywhere. So yeah.
They're everywhere. You know that, you got peace of mind, right? That
Mhm.
as you're driving along, most likely the next exit, you're going to be able to pull off and you'll be able to get gas.
But you ready for my pivot to today's headline theme?
Yes.
You ready, guys? You guys ready? As I was driving through Illinois at 10 p.m., there were these eerie red flashing lights all around the horizon. They were flashing in sync. You know what they were? I'm talking dozens of red flashing lights in the middle of nowhere, flashing in sync at me.
Were they coal plants?
They were wind farms. They were wind turbines. So the viewers and listeners who frequent the Midwest or Texas, you've probably seen these red flashing lights in the night. If you've driven on the interstate in the middle of the high plains, that's where you've got gigawatts of wind farms. And even though I did not have a good charging experience in the Midwest, at least partly, at least I knew that a large portion of the electricity that was fueling my car was coming from these wind farms. Okay. Now, I want to talk to you guys about how EVs do represent a brighter future for planet Earth. They're not perfect, especially in 2023, but considering what lies ahead in the near future, they represent a better alternative to the status quo. And I'm hoping Justise will back me up in this, but yeah. I'm here to stir the pot and
Well, I think a lot of people have a lot of questions about this. So, Justin, I hear a lot about the one that makes me laugh the most are those who say, well, the lithium mining is bad for the earth and, you're stripping the earth of the minerals and blah, blah, blah. And the next thing they say is drill, drill, drill. So it's somewhat ironic when they say that. People who've never cared about the planet before are very concerned about lithium mining now. So, how does that play into the long-term effects of the EVs? And does that really make it any better than an ICE vehicle?
yeah. So I'm going to kind of jump all over the place here, and I will try to keep this as organized as possible. But I want to share a few thoughts that come to mind. And at any point, I want to hear more questions that some of your viewers have had, because that's what I really want to do is answer questions. And Phil, Ray,
Yeah, Phil and Ray have questions. I know that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So the best thing you can do, no matter what, is to drive less. Let's just get that out of the way. That driving less is the best thing you can do as far as reducing your carbon emissions related to transportation. But that's not the world many of us live in. let's talk about the emissions from driving every single mile that we drive in our vehicle, no matter what the type of vehicle is. And then we're going to get to the other effects of transportation, whether it's oil drilling or lithium mining, because that is something I am concerned about, and we'll talk about it. But when it comes to emissions from a vehicle, EVs are better in a few different ways. Electric motors are far more efficient than a gasoline engine and a diesel engine. For example, my 78 kilowatt hour battery pack, 76 or 78, somewhere around there, it contains, when you come to the units of energy level, it contains the equivalent of about 3.5 gallons of gas. So that means with a range on a warm day of about 250 miles, units of energy, which if you get down to like the scientific level, that's like joules of energy. It takes me the equivalent of about 3.5 gallons of gas to go 250 miles. That's something that gasoline engines are not able to achieve. Why do I say that with such certainty? Well, Justice, do you agree, or Phil, do you agree that combustion engines have basically already been optimized over the past century in the mass market? I mean,
100%.
there are incremental improvements we can do, right? Like you might be able to squeeze another 5 miles per gallon out of that Prius, or another 5 miles per gallon out of that hybrid F-150.
Sure.
But you're not going to go 250 miles on 3.5 gallons of gas.
No.
Not
Yeah.
without a hybrid battery.
Yeah, which
Right.
I am in support of hybrids, but we should talk about that in another show.
Yeah.
All right, so you've got more efficient means of generating power, electric motors versus combustion engines. But you've also got the ability, it's not a guarantee, the ability to generate the electricity that powers these cars from cleaner sources. Now, I came prepared with just a few stats that I didn't want to forget when I was making this precise point. Now, in the United States, as of 2021, so not even this year, clean energy is quickly on the rise. Now, do you guys have any guess for how much of our electricity comes from renewable sources? I'm not even talking nuclear. I'm talking solar, wind, and hydropower.
8%.
I was going to guess 10.
So as of 2021, it was 21%.
Ooh.
And then when you
Higher in
add
California.
nuclear, which yes, we know nuclear has its risks, but it's zero emissions when it's producing electricity and not, going into meltdown. Nuclear makes up another 18%. Fossil fuels nationwide about 60%. And then when you start to look at states with a lot of EV adoption, California, New York, but even a state that is very different from those two, Texas, you've got some states around the country where renewable energy now makes up well over 30% of the state's energy mix. And that's just talking solar, wind, and hydro. Nuclear is also a factor in all of those states. So what I'm saying is the electric grid that would be used to power these EVs now and in the future is rapidly cleaning up. Is it ever going to get to 100% clean energy? That's a topic for debate that would take up a whole nother show. But what we know is that right now we're at about 21%. That was actually as of a year and a half ago, 21% renewable energy for the US grid. By 2030, all forecasts point towards over 40%. And then it seems like with the addition of more and more battery storage for the electrical grid, not for cars, it'd be easy to get over 50%. Now, beyond 50%, there are hurdles. Like I said, this isn't a US power grid show. This is an EV show, but that would be a whole nother topic of can we get to 100% renewable energy? But think about that. If you're getting about half of your electricity from clean sources in, 2035, and you're electrifying transportation. And then on top of that, you got to keep in mind that electric motors are so much more efficient than combustion engines ever will be. You're looking at a lot less emissions for every mile driven in an EV compared to ICE vehicles. Throw some questions at me because I know I've done a lot of talking in today's show.
So, based on what you've just said, how many more EVs do we need to compensate for the fact that there's what 300 million gas powered and diesel powered vehicles in this country?
Now, the only other statistic I brought you, Ray,
Yes.
is that 29% of the US's total carbon emissions, greenhouse gases, 29% of specifically carbon emissions comes from transportation. Of that, 58% are light duty vehicles, and the rest are medium and heavy duty vehicles. And then you've also got actually a surprisingly small percentage that are aircraft and trains and things like that. So, how many more do you need? Well, I'm a realist when it comes to this topic, Ray. And I don't know if Justice and I wouldn't say clashed in the past on this topic, but we definitely have discussed it in depth. I know that EV adoption is going to go slow. I mean, right now we're at almost 8% of new vehicle sales in America being fully electric. That's not hybrids and plug-in hybrids. That's fully electric. I would be surprised if by 2030 we're anywhere over 20%. That's my opinion. Okay. So how many do we need? We need a whole lot more, but we know what the roadblocks are. EVs are still expensive. The prices have come down a lot, and they're coming down. But a bigger issue, and even the surveys say this, a bigger issue than the prices is charging infrastructure. If you need to tow a trailer around for work and towing is going to drop your electric truck's range to just 120 miles, that's not going to cut it, for many people. So I'm understanding of the realities of electrification and the challenges that come with it. But if we're going to make a difference when it comes to climate warming emissions, we're going to have to do a whole lot better than 8% of new vehicle sales. And one thing that I think is really going to help this is the used EV tax credit that goes into effect in 2024, right, Justice?
Yeah.
January. Yeah.
January.
Yeah. Now, man, just 1 year ago, we did not think it'd be possible to find a used EV for $25,000. I remember saying that myself.
Yep.
But look at us now, how times have changed. And it looks like it'll be possible to find a used EV for $25,000 and get that used EV tax credit. So in order for mass adoption in the United States, a few things need to happen. Mostly it's affordability and better charging infrastructure.
And we do have a question here, Justin, from one of our members. Well, it's not a question. He has a comment, but I know you know where this is going. But coal powers EVs in Alabama. So if coal is providing the electricity, is it any better to drive an EV than a gas-powered vehicle?
I do have an answer for you. So the dirtiest electrical grid in America is actually the Midwestern grid, which does have their saving grace is the growing wind power that they have and solar. But even in the dirtiest grid, and I believe out of that, the dirtiest state is Wisconsin. As of just a few years ago, so not today, driving an electric vehicle produced the same emissions as driving a hybrid that got about 60 miles per gallon. And that was in the worst state. So let me put that in different terms. You would have to drive a combustion vehicle that gets at least 60 miles per gallon in the state with the dirtiest electric grid in order to have emissions that are equal to driving an EV in that state. Everywhere else, you'd have to be getting far higher miles per gallon to reach a break-even point. And we're going to talk about the emissions that come from mining the minerals for the battery. I want to make sure we talk about that in this show. So we'll get there in a second. But I know for a fact that in Alabama, you're not a part of like an Alabama power grid. For example, I just talked about Wisconsin. They're a part of the MISO. It's MISO. It's a whole grid that's up in the Northern Plains. Alabama, they don't have their own grid. Texas is the only state that has its own grid.
What about Alaska?
Oh, awesome. I didn't know that Alaska did too, but that makes sense. They're way up there.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing Hawaii. But yeah, so in the southeastern US, I don't recall the name of the grid, but they're pulling in generation sources from everywhere from Georgia all the way over to Louisiana, down into Florida, where you've got plenty of solar energy. So yeah, coal is a part of the energy mix in Alabama and in most of America. But in most grids, you're going to be hard pressed to find coal making up more than 30% of today's energy mix. I live in West Virginia. Coal built this state. It literally did, and it still does to an extent. But even here, where we are in the PJM grid, coal does not make up more than 25% of my electricity, and I'm in like the most pro coal state in the country.
But also isn't, Elon has talked about this a couple times before, isn't getting that, getting your energy from gas or coal is still more efficient than putting gasoline into your moving vehicle, because it's just much more, you get much more energy density out of it.
Yeah, I'm going to have to show, that's true. But I'm going to have to show some restraint here because this is a topic that I could just ramble on and on about. But let me try to keep this short. One thing that used to not be factored into these calculations, but these days, thankfully, is the carbon cost of producing and transporting fossil fuels. So, yeah, of course, you've got to drill it out of the ground, but you've also got to process it. That takes a lot of energy. That's also why hydrogen and fuel sources are not the best unless you get green energy to generate that. But processing, refining fossil fuels takes a lot of energy in itself. Then, yeah, it may go into a pipeline, but at some point it's going to be at a depot where it's going to be transported, by heavy duty truck, maybe by train. Those are additional emissions in addition to the emissions that come from burning it, right? And so that's something also to be taken into consideration. Whereas if you have solar or any power source, even coal or natural gas, well, that's not really true, because coal, you blow it out of a mountain, throw it into the back of a train, haul it to the power plant. So that those are transportation related emissions. But when it comes to the power grid, if you're looking at like wind and solar, there's no like cost of transporting that electricity. It's goes right into the grid.
But isn't there a cost associated with, well, establishing the wind farm itself?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, somehow all those giant ass pieces had to get there.
Oh, yes.
From
Yes.
China.
And the
From
brightest
wherever.
minds in sustainability research long ago have looked into this and tried to calculate specifically what this is and what the payback time would be. And it is minuscule compared to how much carbon is saved by generating megawatts of electricity from one wind turbine. So yes, there is an impact for sure for constructing one of these giant fiberglass wind turbines or whatever they make them out of these days and transporting it and building it. But when you're considering that one of these wind turbines today generally produces between 3 and 7 megawatts of electricity when it's spinning at full capability, you make up that carbon impact from production very quickly.
Don't they kill birds?
Wow.
Yeah, and that's a problem. And you know what they've started to do? Back when I was a freelancer, Ray, I actually freelanced for a few different organizations that tried to find solutions to these problems. They did not deny, these organizations were nonprofits that did not deny that wind turbines kill birds.
Mhm.
And sometimes, this is much more rare, but even solar farms can create like an optical illusion that would cause ducks to land on them and die. So there were these wildlife related problems surrounding renewable energy that they were looking for solutions for, and they ended up partnering with some massive wind farms in the Midwest and adjusting the time that the wind farm was on and off based on when the birds were most active. And I know you're thinking, well, that means that at certain times of the day the wind farm is not producing electricity. Yeah, that's true, but they're trying to find solutions in a way that can be most sustainable and less harmful.
Just out of curiosity, are birds flocking to giant coal power plants and landing on the chimneys and having a good time? Or is that bad for them as well?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we don't even have time to go into the I get your joke, Justice, but yeah, the environmental impacts of just continuing to dig carbon out of the ground and burn it. Yeah.
Can I share something interesting with you?
Yeah.
There was going to be, and the key word here is was, there was going to be a wind farm built off the coast of southern New Jersey.
Got
A
canceled.
Danish company, Orsted, I think it is.
Mhm.
just as recently as a month ago, put up $100 million additional to show their good faith. And 2 days ago, they pulled out altogether.
Yeah, I read all about that. They said interest rates and parts shortages were why they pulled out. But also,
Wasn't the
undeniable
political
fact.
impact?
What's that?
It wasn't the political impact.
Could have been. I don't know. But solar is so much cheaper than wind these days. Like solar doesn't really need to be subsidized on the commercial scale. Subsidies help individual homeowners get residential solar because it costs $20,000 on the low end. But when it comes to the commercial scale solar, it doesn't really need subsidies anymore, whereas wind does continue to rely on subsidies. So it looks like the future is going to be shifting more towards solar and away from wind. But one place where that may not be true is offshore. It's interesting that was an offshore wind farm that was canceled. I really think the interest rates were a big part of that. Look how high they are. What, 20-something year highs?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But I wanted to confront the dark realities of owning an EV and electrification of transportation overall. Some things that weigh heavily on my mind and I want to address, but also hopefully provide a silver lining to show everyone that just because it's a problem today doesn't mean it has to be a problem in 10 years or 20 years. That's what I'm thinking about. So the faults of EVs when it comes to environmental impacts. We just talked about electricity generation, so I'm not going to go deeply into that. But of course, the grid needs to be cleaned up for this to have a broader positive impact on the world, right? But let's talk briefly about mining. Mining does have severe environmental impacts. It does. I mean, my background before the marketing world was environmental science. I know very well the impacts of strip mining to obtain these minerals. And then there's something that I care just as much about, which is the societal impact of the people who are working in these mines. That is something that weighs heavily on my mind. Now, what gives me hope is that we're talking about these problems and the industries involved are talking about these problems. The automakers are talking about it and they're looking for solutions. Those solutions are not immediate. And I had to think about this when I almost didn't buy the Ioniq 5 because of the fact that Hyundai seems to get their minerals from some pretty shady markets where you don't know where it came from. But I ended up doing it thinking about how much I drive and the broader impact over, keeping this vehicle for 10 years. But I was not comfortable with that fact. And I hope that automakers are holding their supply chains responsible. But the good news is that it looks like we're making improvements on that front. New sources of these minerals, everything from lithium to cobalt, and hopefully moving away from cobalt in general. There's positive news everywhere you look on that front. But in 2023, it's still not something to be proud of if you own an EV. There's a lot of work to be done cleaning up the sources of raw materials that go into the EV supply chain.
Can I ask a silly question? You've got 36,000 miles on your Ioniq 5?
Yeah, which I would mean that I have passed my break-even point when it comes to emissions.
Does it mean you're out of warranty on the vehicle other than for the battery?
No, I'm getting close though.
Okay.
It's got a pretty good 50,000 mile warranty for some components. I should look at
Gotcha.
that.
What type
Yeah,
of
they have a stepped.
Yeah, it's stepped.
Yeah.
Sorry.
what type of maintenance expenses have you had with that vehicle? Just out of curiosity.
Well, expenses, you mean like not covered by warranty?
Yeah, I mean, like, have you had to put tires on the car?
I bought winter tires because I live on an icy hill.
Okay.
That's it.
So you've got 36,000 miles on the original tires?
No, I kept my other tires. So after 15,000 miles, I kept the originals. They were still good.
Yeah.
And bought these winter tires. Well, so I switch them off. I've got 2 sets of tires. Yeah.
Okay. Any other expenses that you've had that weren't covered under warranty, just out of curiosity?
I bought washer fluid.
Okay.
Bought some new windshield wipers. No, Yeah, and the powertrain has not needed any work.
Brakes?
Even under warranty, like, it's not needed any work. The work that has been done has been non-powertrain related. Like, I had a button on my seat that was broken.
Uh-huh. Brakes when do they anticipate you're going to need brakes?
I need to look at my maintenance schedule, but it's ridiculously long from now because it's far from now because we have regenerative braking on these EVs. So
Yeah.
I'm not really using the friction brakes very often. Yeah.
Justice. You remember that, Ray?
Yeah, yeah.
We tried
Some
that,
of us have
that
been promoting regenerative braking for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, where's that video of me driving a Tesla?
I have sent that to you.
I haven't
No,
seen
you
that
have
either.
not.
I did.
No,
I'll-
send it
I'll
again. I've never
resend
seen it.
again. Yes.
I've never.
But-
I want to see that.
Oh, we discontinued the coach social media. So,
But I want to talk
put it up.
quickly about tires because Ray,
Yep.
Ray and I were just bringing up tires. EVs are too heavy. In order to be much, much better for the environment, future generations of electric vehicle technologies are going to need to rely on lighter weight batteries, and that's going to be solid state batteries. Solid state batteries are coming. It's a matter of like whether it's going to be 3 years from now or 10 years from now, but within the next decade, probably within the next 5 years, we're going to start to see some vehicles coming to market with a solid state battery. It looks like a few automakers, Toyota and BMW come to mind, may bring solid state batteries to market in a plug-in hybrid, kind of as like a testing ground for this new technology. Now, why do EVs need to be lighter weight? Well, just think about it. They're going to be more efficient. They're already pretty damn efficient. My car gets 101 miles per gallon equivalent on the highway in the city, and on the highway it's like, I don't know, 88 miles per gallon equivalent. But imagine if my car did not weigh 4,400 pounds. It would be more efficient. And then one of the big consequences of having such a heavy vehicle is and a lot of torque. Got a lot of torque, 320 horsepower. I burn through tires quickly if I don't drive responsibly. Okay. And burning through tires has negative environmental impacts. It does. There were some studies that came out pretty recently looking at the particulate pollution of burning through tires. That it wasn't EV specific. It's just no matter what vehicle you drive, if you're burning through tires, no matter how you're burning through them, whether you're driving on a gravel driveway every day and that causes you to burn through tires, or you're going to the track and that's causing you to burn through tires. Simply getting 10,000 miles out of your tires is not good for the environment. It's not climate warming emissions, but it's not good for water quality. It's not good for your health to be breathing in that particulate material. So if we have lighter weight electric vehicles due to advancements in battery technology, we can work towards a solution to that. Not to mention, I was recently reading about how the tire companies themselves are working and making quite a bit of progress on cleaning up tires themselves. So tires made out of more environmentally friendly materials and things like that.
I would just like to point out I have 65,000 miles on my car. Still have the original tires. They're still fine. I had them rotated about a month and a half ago. They said they're fine. I
You
have
must
no
drive like an
issues
old
with
man, Justice.
And I don't use it's torque more than it's the weight. I mean, the weight definitely
It's the
plays into
torque,
it,
yeah.
but it's the torque that really, like, if you're heading on that all the time, which I only do if I'm merging onto the freeway, I don't
That's a good
release
point.
out. I don't launch out of my
It's the
vehicle all
torque.
the time. It's the
Yep.
torque, and so that's 65,000 miles on my tire with no problem. So I'm fine with it.
So yeah, to summarize, EVs need to have cleaner supply chains. We're making progress on that front, but that takes time. I think the last I heard, to open a new lithium mine in the United States takes like 7 years because of
Yeah.
regulatory paperwork and all that. Yeah, Phil?
I have a question about the solid states. That so lighter, good.
Yeah.
Will will you be able to get a longer range out of it as well as quicker charging? Are those couple more benefits to get with solid state, or is it just more that it's a lighter battery?
Opinions vary on where the industry will head. Justice, you're going to be more of an expert on this. What have you heard?
So it's much more energy dense. So it'll be lighter for the same amount of energy. And
Yes.
that's what the lighter comes from. So yes, you'll be able to
Okay.
get, if you had that same amount of weight, you'd have a much, much longer range.
Yeah, but
Okay.
think
I
about
mean,
this,
So, but
Phil.
you're going to want more range, though, right? I mean, we're
Turns your
talking about
brain,
range anxiety all the time, right? So,
But
yeah,
what if chargers are everywhere?
but I mean, chargers A you're going to
okay,
get
if
everywhere.
they're everywhere, we're still then we got to talk about the time to actually charge it. We're still,
Solid state will be much faster charging as well.
okay.
Yeah,
Much, much
that's going to
faster.
be key to like 10 to 15-minute charge times. I don't
Mhm.
think, and I don't, I don't want to say never, but we're not looking for EVs to take just 3 minutes to charge. Justice, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's not the goal here. We're not trying to like match fueling up a car at a gas station. But I already think my car charges too fast sometimes whenever I'm trying to run into the gas station and I come out after 16 minutes and I'm already at 90% state of charge. Imagine if you can get solid state batteries that charge in 10 to 15 minutes and get you 300 miles of range. That's in the near term future what we're looking at, and that would be huge for electrification.
Here's a question for you in regards to solid state batteries. And I'm saying this, and I'll preface it by saying I understand that EV fires are much rarer than fires involving hybrids or ICE vehicles. But when EV fires happen, they burn at such a high rate and such a high temperature that it's a real issue. Would solid state batteries fall under that same type of umbrella, or because they're solid state, that if they were to catch fire, it wouldn't be as much of a catastrophe as what we know now?
I don't know. Do you know, Justice?
I know that this is a study that's being done right now, right? Rave, like fire departments all over the country, like how this is. I'm guessing that we're going to have some tech out there, or some, whatever foam or something that's going to help with this. But solid state won't have thermal runaway. So that's another,
Well, that's
projected.
mainly what causes the
The
EV fires.
theory
Yeah.
is, that it won't have thermal runaway. So you won't have those kind of problems as much anymore in those vehicles.
Gotcha. Thank
Because
you.
that's what it does, right? Right. It's not that it's so hard to put out. It's that you put it out and then thermal runaways running through the rest of the batteries, so it lights up again. And then
Yes.
you put it out and it lights up again and put it out. So solid state wouldn't have that same
Yeah,
issue.
well, and I think
mean,
the major concern about EVs today, if they were to catch fire, is also the heat of the
Mhm.
fire is much more significant, and burns much hotter than a comparable ICE vehicle of any type.
if I could just go back to what Phil asked a minute ago about the charging times and stuff, I think we miss one thing. We talk about people like me who live in multifamily dwellings all the time, and where are we going to charge, and blah, 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 and how long is it going to take? As of 2019, 77% of families lived in single family homes. That's only was that 23% that live in
Mhm.
multifamily dwellings. So whereas most EV owners charge at home, so you don't need one for one equivalent gas station to EV chargers. You just don't need it. And right now, like in California, they're really concentrating on the highway corridors, because that's when you might need it, when you're going on a trip. You don't need it everywhere. Lots of hotels this is their big thing. They're starting to advertise is that they have EV chargers on their properties too. So even when you get to your destination, the hotels might have chargers. So we're not looking for a one-to-one equivalent to gas station when we're talking about charging stations. Again, 77% of people live in single family homes where you just gotta go plug it in. So
Yeah, but don't you, if I can push back just a little bit on that, don't you think with what the cost of homes are today, that a greater percentage of Americans are going to live in multifamily housing moving forward than in a single family home? because single family homes are just inordinately expensive right now. And there's nothing on this horizon that suggests that interest rates for mortgages are going to go down anytime soon. So that the vast majority of, if you can't afford a car, and the vast majority of Americans can't, well, they also can't afford a single family home. So that I would think that we will see greater housing density for multifamily housing than what we have seen up to this point.
Well, so let me answer that real fast, and let me clarify on that. When you say you don't see interest rates coming down, California real estate is so expensive now. If interest rates dropped all of a sudden, nobody would be able to afford a home here. The prices would, the $750,000 home would be $1.5 million all of a sudden if interest rates dropped. So that would just be even worse. So we're just in a horrible situation here. But I do agree that I think multifamily units or ADUs are becoming really big. The governor just signed a bill allowing ADU additional units. So basically the little in-law house out back on your property, allowing the people can rent out. That's becoming a lot more popular. So I do see that, but I still think, you're still talking in 20 years, 65, 70%
I
home
get what you're
ownership.
saying.
So,
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
So it's still just not going to be a 1-for-1. I mean, I live in an apartment that I do not have access to charging right now here. And I just go once a week and I charge up, and the average time is 15, 20 minutes and I'm out, and that's enough for me in my Tesla. So, I don't see it as a huge deal. Now, I don't drive a lot because I work right here at home.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd have to drive to and from work and do all that stuff. But I do take a lot of road trips down to LA. So that balances.
Have you ever thought about moving back to LA?
I have thought about moving to LA, but unless Zach gives me a major raise, like doubles my salary, I'll probably end up in Raleigh before I end up in LA.
Well, Raleigh, here you come.
Raleigh is calling your name, Justise.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I don't want anyone to get confused. Zach pays me very well. I'm not saying that. I'm saying LA is really expensive.
I hear you.
Well, let's do this again. Let's do this again in a few weeks, you guys. This was awesome, and I still have a lot more to say, but I think we're out of time.
Yeah, we're just about. It's Ray's lunchtime, and he starts getting cranky.
Well, I just I fought off my hunger because we have special guests. I mean, I don't get to see Justin very often anymore. So this was, I ate a snack so I wouldn't have an issue. Yeah, I'm good.
And here I haven't even had
very informative show.
Yeah, it has. I learned a lot. And
Justin,
somebody asked when am I
too much information.
Somebody asked when am I going to go to electric? I'm not. I mean, literally, since Zach moved back to Washington on September 12th, and at that time, I think I had 6,700 and some miles on my car. It is now November 3rd. I have 6,920 miles on my car. I haven't even been to the gas station in over a month. So it just doesn't make sense for me living in a condo and driving as few miles as I do to ever have an electric vehicle at this point in time. So that's my answer to those who say, when's Ray going electric? He's not. I'll die before I go electric.
Yeah, I think after Detroit, we were very clear. There's no way Ray's getting a Tesla, at least. That is I will resend that video to you, Ray.
Please. I want that. I need that.
Yeah.
My life will not be complete until I see that.
We'll pull it up here. Well, we'll edit it and cut out some of the language.
No, leave the language in. That's what makes it special.
That's
That-
true. Because if I bleeped it out, it would just be bleep, 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 bleep.
Uh-huh.
You wouldn't even understand what he was saying.
Yeah. Well, thank you,
All right,
Justin,
yeah.
for being here.
Thank you
I'll
very
see
much,
you guys
Justin.
soon.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
thank you everyone for
Yes.
watching.
Let's
good to
do
be
this
back.
regularly, Justin. Let's do it regularly. Yeah.
Let's do it once a month. I'll be back.
If
Yeah.
you come on once a month, we'll be thrilled about that. I know
Absolutely.
a lot of our audience loves the information you bring versus the opinions that Ray and I bring.
Ah,
And then Phil gets to moderate so much.
Actually,
Actually, Phil usually just sides with Ray and gangs up on me. So I enjoy when you're on, Justin.
we should almost have like a part 2. I feel like we should talk about e-fuels. We should talk about
Yes.
hydrogen. Like there's a bunch of stuff we could talk
I've got
about.
a bunch of questions about hydrogen and mass transportation.
Yeah.
Because I think
Well,
we agree that's where that
Oh.
belongs. But yeah, that's a whole nother show.
I'll see you
Yeah,
guys
we're
again
turning
soon,
it-
but
yeah,
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Well,
And
you guys.
a real quick shout out. Thank you, everyone, for making Auto Insiders the #1 automotive podcast in America and in Canada. I just can't believe that has happened. There's so many more great episodes coming out, too, that you guys haven't even seen yet. We got some major guests lined up coming on. It's been an amazing run, and I thank everyone who has watched. And those who haven't watched, go on, listen to Ray, talk to people. They're very personal, intimate conversations. It's amazing. This is not a news show. And we think anyone who hasn't listened, you'll love it.
Thank you for plugging
So-
it.
And it's produced by the best producer in the business.
Absolutely.
So, of course.
That's right.
Justice. Yes.
So thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
We'll see you
everybody.
next
Have a
week.
great
Everybody.
weekend.